Hi, welcome back. Today I want to discuss the Mideast. Unless you've been living in a cave somewhere, you've been hearing about the terrorists, the Islamic State army, and all that. Before you even get into those details, we need to look a little bit about the two aspects of the Mideast that have to be considered into all of this. The first is tribalism. The second is Islam. Tribalism is basically, just as you talk about tribes anywhere, they're determined by geography and by the society around them. Now, if you want to go back about 1,000 years BC, you had the 12 tribes of Israel. They got along pretty much, and they had a little skirmish here and there. But when they were faced with an outside enemy coming in, the 12 tribes of Israel organized into the kingdom of Israel, or originally the monarch of Israel. And they did this by religion, one God, Yahweh. They survived from that point on. Now that's tribalism, tribes being separate entities. Let's fast forward to the end of World War II, World War I. A Brit and a Frenchman decided they were going to draw the lines for all the countries, especially in Eastern Europe, after the war. So they formed Yugoslavia. Yugoslavia was basically made up of 3 tribes that had been independent before. There was the Croats, the Serbs, and the Bosnians. Serbia had their own country. It was pieced up and most of it went to Yugoslavia. Bosnia was with Bosnia and Herzegovina, which was a state country. And then you had the Croats. It took, when the Soviets came in and took control of Yugoslavia, they put Marshal Tito Braz in charge of it all. And being a strong man, he was able to keep the country together until his death around 1990. And at that point, the tribes declared war on each other, and you had the Bosnia War. You cannot put unlike people together and expect everything to work. Fast forward now, the Ottoman Empire and the caliphate that ran it, I will get back to caliphate in a minute and explain it to you, ended in 1926. And before that, that was the Ottoman Empire, mainly Turkey, but it covered a lot of territory. Another Brit by the name of Sykes and a Frenchman by the name of Peugeot decided they were going to draw all the lines for the Mideast. If you take a look at the map of the Mideast, most of them are straight lines around the country. That seldom happens because they're usually on the border of rivers or mountains or something like that. So what happened when they drew their lines? Well, the Mideast is made up of majority are Muslims, followers of Islam. And there are 2 main groups. That's the Sunnis and the Shia. We call them Shiites. And another group which are Sunnis, but they're Kurds. So originally it was Kurdistan. Well, after they got done, part of Kurdistan was in Iraq. Excuse me. Part of Kurdistan was in Iraq. It's now northern Iraq. The Kurds have their territory in northern Iraq. Part of it's in Iran, part of it's in Syria, and part of it's in Turkey. Now, for social reasons, the rest of Islam really didn't like the Kurds. When Hussein was in charge of Iraq, you had the Sunnis, the Kurds, and the Shia. And he was able, just as Tito did, to keep them under control and keep Iraq as a country by killing off people that didn't adhere. He didn't like the Kurds, obviously, because he gassed hundreds of them and killed them. Now, it's tribalism, the Kurds, and that, and it's religious differences. Now, just like in other religions, it's not pure. Islam is not purely this religion and everyone adheres to the same thing. Under the Islam, the 5 pillars of Islam are the 5 rules of conduct. Are Shahada, you got it from Shahada, and this is the main rule in Islam, that there is only one God, His name is Allah, and Muhammad was his messenger. That's number one in all of Islam. Number two is Salat. This is the prayer 5 times a day originally in Zakat, which is giving. Every Muslim is supposed to give 2.5% of their income to the needy and the poor. You have Shawm, which is fasting. During the month of Ramadan, the high holy month, they're supposed to fast from daylight to dusk. Then you have Hajj. At least once in your lifetime, you need to have a pilgrimage to Mecca. If you can't, it's understood, but you're supposed to try. Now that sounds simple because that was the basis of Islam. Over the years, you got smaller groups and larger groups, depending. We're talking about, let's go back to the Caliphate. When Muhammad was alive from 622 to 632, when all this began, he formed a caliphate, which encompassed a big area in the Mideast. After 632 and his death, the caliphate that succeeded him got more and more land until at one point in the early like 1300s, 1400s, in one point the caliphate extended from the Iberian Peninsula, which is Portugal and Spain, across northern Africa, all of what we know of the Mideast, and Turkey. One caliphate came, one caliphate left. A caliphate is simply a country that is ruled by the same person who is in charge of the religion. And why is that important? It's because this new Islamic State says they have their own caliphate. Now, as time went on, originally, after Muhammad, the people that came about were imams and caliphates, the leaders. And some of them put their own little brand into things. For instance, they never changed Rule 1, but Rule 2, on the prayers, some of them pray 3 times a day, some pray 5 times a day. And as far as the fasting, it's a little bit different here and there. There was the difference in Shahada, which is the one God, Muhammad's his messenger. They had differences of opinions on who should be an imam and who should be the ruler of the caliphate. The last main caliphate was the Ottoman Empire, and it ended in 1926 when they formed the new Republic of Turkey. Now, this may sound complex. It actually is. This is why when you see somebody say something simple about the Mideast, they don't understand how complex this situation is. You have 3 main groups of Islam: the Sunnis, the Shia, and the Sufis. The Sunnis and Shia are usually the ones that command. Sorry about that. I had an important phone call I had to take, so I'll try to get my train of thought back on track. The 3 main groups in the Mideast today in Islam are the Sunnis, the Shia, and the Sufis. Now, the Sunnis and the Shiites really don't like each other. The Sufis, they're the mystical part of Islam, and no one bothers with them. Okay, now what's important about this is I discussed about Kurdistan being broken apart after the Sykes-Picot remapping of the Mideast. And the Sunnis and the Shia don't like each other. And so it causes problems. Now, if you think the turmoil in the Mideast now is something new, it's not. For the last 1,400 years, they've been one big uprising over another. Now, in the next video, I'm going to be talking about the consequences of all this. But right now, I want you to understand where and what everyone is. Okay, the Sunnis are the biggest population. The Shias are mainly in Iraq, Iran, and Syria. Now, Below these three designations of Sunni, Shia, and Sufi are all sorts of undertones, all sorts of sects that belong to it. For instance, in Saudi Arabia, the whole country is Sunni. The leadership, the Saud family that has run Saudi Arabia for ages, they are Sunni, but they are Wahhabis. They particularly don't want things to change because they're different than the rest of the people. Now understand, it's complex. It's really, really complex. I don't want to go into everything at one time. There are no simple answers to what's going on in the Mideast. Now, in the next tape, I'm going to go into what we should do and what we shouldn't do. You know that the Islamic State, with their own caliph that they've designated as for the caliphate, are going down from Syria into Iraq. They're Sunnis. When we left Iraq, we put the Shiites into power under the understanding that they would treat the Sunnis okay and that they'd leave the Kurds alone. Well, no sooner than we were out of Iraq, they started punishing the Sunnis, and they definitely ignored and went after the Kurds. So when the Islamic State army, the terrorists as we call them, came down from Syria into Iraq, the Sunnis in Iraq were being persecuted, they were being not played with right. So they immediately joined the Islamic State army. See how complex this is? Okay, now you would think that Saudi Arabia would want to help them. No, because here's the problem. With the royal family, the people in charge being Wahhabis, they don't want the Islamic State army anywhere near them, because their people are mostly Sunnis. And they would probably join the Islamic State army immediately, and the Saud family would be out of power. What about something else? So if we think we're going to get a lot of help over there with anything we want to do, we're sadly mistaken. This is where we are now. In the second video, I will talk about what maybe the United States should do, what's in store for the United States, and generally what might happen in the future. Until then, thank you. Check the links at the bottom. Give us a like, subscribe, and you'll get everything we're doing. Thank you, and goodbye.